Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Egberto Will is your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. We have to get busy rather quickly because it's a lot to do today. Anyhow, let me read Michael Rudnin's prescient messages real quickly. More than 100 Nobel Prize winners call for fossil fuel phase out ahead of Biden's climate summit. Global warming is an existential threat. Do we want to survive? We need 100% renewables by 2030. Second item, Biden pledges to cut U.S. greenhouse gases by 50% by 2030, with major implications for oil and gas sectors. Half measures are not enough, but to start at all, this begins with ending the fossil fuel subsidy and transferring that funding to infrastructure investments in green energy. I agree 100%. Earth Days, it says, no, that's just the start. It alone won't be enough. That's true. We need a whole lot of other initiatives. Earth Day turns 50, and the green movement faces fresh challenges. What do you think of our civilization chances are of reaching 100% renewable energy by 2030 and surviving the next 50 years? If we get the right leadership, if we get rid of people who are continuously hurting the rest of America with their talking points, their fallacies, their lies, we could do it. Can we be 100% energy efficient? Absolutely, no doubt. From a scientific point of view, we can be 100% energy efficient. And not only energy efficient, but completely green. The limiting factor in getting green is our economic systems. And maybe we should do a show on that some other time. The economic system is the barrier that prevents us from doing what's necessary. You know, ants don't have economic systems. Termites don't have economic system. They build what's necessary to have all of them live in unity. But as human beings running under a capitalist economic system, there are certain rules in there that are completely and diametrically opposed to what the green energy stands for. Because in a society where you have to consume, in a society where your economic system depends on certain things, and also where your economic system depends on or ran by a particular wealthy that wants to maintain that advantage, it is mathematically then impossible to do what's necessary. But are the resources around us to have 100% green energy? It is absolutely there. But under this current economic system where we have to decide, if we do this, can people make profit from it? If we do this, can they enrich themselves? In a system based on that, it is next to impossible to do it. So my answer to you, Michael Rudnin, is the following. Green energy also requires a change in our economic system. One that says humanity first, and we build business and we build technology around what humanity needs. The long one, I can't read that other one right now because I got to get busy. Watching press conference with New Green. Thank you, Kathy Courtney. Abraham Trump says, this show is a cancer. Still love you, Abraham. I'm just happy that you're here. Thank you for being here, and I hope that you will get something out of this show. So listen to it, and listen to it with the heart and the objectivity with which we're coming here. Julie Van Asdel, Abraham Trump, creative name. Did Egberto just said we need to get rid of people? Genocide, much Egberto? I don't think so. All right, Egberto, yes, please do a show about our economic system and green energy. I'll do that. This is my government name, Julie. All right, Deborah John, LA. Michael Egberto, short version. Sign and square and share this. Okay, great. There you go with the short version for Brother Michael Rudnin. Anyhow, folks, how I'm going to start is I'm going to start us out with the interview that I did with Bruce Boise about the drugs, the opioids. I want to play this. Then we'll move on to the rest of the show, which is very important. And I can actually tie all these things together. But let's go ahead and get busy with Bruce. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis. Today we have a special guest, a repeat guest. He's going to give us an update on how things are going with his case. Well, the case is over, but he's going to tell us a little bit more about the opioid epidemic. Bruce Boise worked for nearly 24 years in the pharmaceutical industry, first as a hospital representative, then as a sales manager in the Great Lakes region. After losing his job as a whistleblower, we like that, he spent portions of the next 17 years working with the United States Justice Department on 2 separate False Claims Act cases against his former employer, Cephalon Teva, a neurobiotech company. Bruce, welcome to Politics Done Right again. How are you doing today?
Hey, very good. Thanks for having me again.
Well, look, we want, first of all, let's get started because you actually wrote a book that detailed this entire stuff. Tell us a little bit about why you wrote the book.
I wrote the book. Well, first of all, my lead counsel, Peter Chatfield, wanted me to write the book for like 10 years before. Mm-hmm. And he said, you really have to write the book. You got to tell the story of what went on and how you persevered and what occurred, but you were successful, and that's important. And so he said, you really want to write a book about what a whistleblower would be, what it is, sort of the inside scoop of that, and also to talk about how the opioid crisis came about. And so that's really the reason I initially started to write the book. But now, as the book's been out, I'm doing so much in patient advocacy and involved. There's so much to be involved in to help in the opioid crisis, as little as as much work as I can put into it to help in, like, for example, just getting the information out to even local addiction centers and national. I talk in a national level as well. To Fed Up and to other national organizations. So that's sort of what my role is now. But as it started with Peter's suggestion was to get the book out for describing a whistleblower.
So your book pretty much explains to folks, hey, you can be a whistleblower. It's an important thing to do that, but recognize that there are some repercussions for doing that. Yeah. But you know, it's many times it's the moral thing, and absent you doing it, the same crap goes on and on and on.
You know, and I'll tell you, Alberto, this is sort of a, you know, you have careers and then you have like life careers, like where you wind up working for somebody and you do this job and you make money and you get through life. This has been a change for me where it's been a real cause, a real need area that I see where more people need to join to help. And so that's what it's become now for me, that I'm pretty involved in it most of the time.
Bruce, when your guy contacted me, I said, you know what? He said, you know, he kind of said something similar to that. And my thing was like, I know exactly how you feel. Because you went from being this executive at this company to now you've changed profession. You're an advocate, you're a consumer advocate. You wrote a book to tell folks how, you know, same thing I went through from having a software company to being an advocate for progressive issues. So, I mean, many times people don't understand the change and the change itself, how not only difficult, but rewarding. Because I know that right now, tell me about how rewarding this is to you, that you just know you're actually helping people to make a better life for themselves.
Oh my gosh. Probably the most significant thing that comes out of it is that, you know, I do my daily activity. Like I'm down in the Key West area now, visiting friends. And I went out to dinner and the manager of the restaurant, hey, we haven't seen you in a long time. What have you been doing? And I said, I wrote a book. And they said, wrote a book. And most people didn't know that I was involved in the opioid crisis and I was involved in cases and wore a wire and all that stuff, because you don't talk about that.
Right.
And so I go, well, it's like now I'm really busy with patient advocacy and things like that. And he turned around and he said, oh, I'd love to get one of your books. And I said, well, I think I got one I'm driving. I got one in the truck. And I said, I got one I'll just give you one. He said, okay. So he's at the podium where he's supposed to be for the manager running a restaurant. He's reading it. He comes over and he goes, you know, I lost a relative, 23 years old, athletic injury, on fentanyl, got addicted, finally overdosed. And you hear those stories all the time, that when you start talking about what you're doing now, and it just rolls into this, They tell you about who, what incident was, what family member may have died, or even worse, what occurs as far as the collateral damage. It's like the mom overdosed, but the father and the kids separated and now are not together anymore. The family's gone. And so you run across those kind of things, and you're on the right path of doing good work when you run across those kind of stories almost all the time, all the time. It's amazing to me how much this has affected our country.
Let me tell you something, Bruce. America is a country which it's individualism, not because people want to be individualistic, but it's what it's preached to people, that they so often suffer in silence. We have a culture that suffers in silence. And books like yours and the work that you do tell people it is okay to open up. I have relatives right now, family members right now, who I know have particular health issues, etc., and they would rather deal with a whole lot on their own as opposed to saying, you know what, if you just get help here, things can be so much better, not only for you, but for the family in general. So what you're doing is important work.
I so believe that, and for you too, because as you're having me on, it helps me get the message out. And that's good stuff that you're doing, so that, and all it is, like somebody goes into a doctor's office and they don't want to tell the doctor what's going on, but they've got an idea, but they won't ask the question. Ask the question, write the questions down, ask the question. It's not rocket science with this. The doctor's there and the nurses are there to try to figure it out. I'm going through that with my brother right now. He doesn't want to talk to him about it. And it's like, all you got to do is, and all of a sudden after 2 months of treatment, he's better. And it's like, you don't have to suffer in silence. All you got to do is ask that question, step out of that. You don't have to be this suffering person. You can resolve it. And so it's true. And that's that optimistic view I have in life. That's also true with the opioid crisis. We dare not lose our focus in all these other issues that we have. Now, the pandemic is horrible. I get it. And 500,000 people have died, and it's bad. But you also can't stop a virus, and you can pay attention to cardiovascular disease, oncology issues, and do your pre-medical work, so that those workups, so that patients don't get caught with stage 4 cancer. They catch it earlier, right? And those are the questions. Those are the simple questions to get people to do. That's the patient advocacy part of it.
So before I want to kind of explore that a little bit further, but tell me, what's the state, as you see it, of the opioid crisis? You know that a lot of the companies that you know about, they tried to put that under the ground. They tried not to make it seem as bad as it was. I know there are a lot of suits that been settled right now. What's the state of the opioid epidemic right now?
I think it breaks down into a couple different parts, right? So one, you got the pharmaceutical industry and their role in how they off-labeled the opioid products, whether that's a fentanyl product or whether that was OxyContin. And those folks have been fined, and they've moved on because they sign off that no one can come back after them. Mm-hmm. And some of the fines are substantial, and they're finally getting to that. Also, the distributors. So they've gone after the distributors. So big drug company distributors have been fined as well. Also, there are consultants. So pharmaceutical management consultant, Kinsey is the one that's been fined $573 million. They were doing the consulting and marketing for OxyContin and Purdue. Those are all in place, and those are moving along. The issue with that is that we can't we cannot just forget about that they did that, because greed leads to fraud, leads to patient death. You have to still be an advocate and still pay attention to what's going on, not only with pharmaceutical companies, but also the FDA.
Now, so in effect, do you feel like between the government and these pharmaceutical companies, you think that the resolution is fair, or, you know, it's always hard to think that, well, the resolution with the corporation is fair, but what's your thoughts on that?
I know they're being hammered pretty hard right now. The trouble is that I've been on that side of it where I'm the plaintiff and they're the defendant. And I'll just say this, their defense is a militant defense. In other words, they're not giving anybody up. They're not giving anybody's up. And so you've got to be able to keep track of what goes on. And if, let's say a company X winds up having an opioid they want to get to market, well, just don't let them go to market and start all over again with another opioid just to solve their bottom line. Pay attention to it as an advocate, with different people, like, for example, PROP, physicians for responsible opioid prescribing, those folks that are involved in that, to still be involved in that and still keep track of that. Because there's one aspect of that, and then the other is that, we got drugs coming in that are so cheap, the fentanyl product or any of that they add to, whatever's on the street, which is another issue by itself, right? You almost get addicted by a prescription, like the one kid that had a sports industry injury, and then he winds up having a fentanyl product, then all of a sudden he gets addicted. Well, that kind of situation can occur, but it's not as relevant. Maybe it's still relevant, but
right.
you have so much coming into the country as a fentanyl product. And in fact, methamphetamine is a big issue now coming into the East Coast areas. So you get those, that's why I said there's sort of two different divergent issues coming on now. But you still can't take your eye off the ball with it. You still have to be cognizant of what goes on, and people, bad people do bad things. So.
All right. Two more questions. The first one I'm asking you, and the first one is actually you. But so be thinking about the last one, which is, what didn't I ask you that I wanted to ask, that you wanted me to ask you? But we're going to hold off on that one. I just want you to think about that in the background, because I remember the last time. But anyhow, let's go. let's go ahead and say, with after writing this book, you've changed your life. You're now doing a lot of what I call altruistic things that are helping people. Give me some specifics as far as what you're going to be doing, not only what you've done, what you're going to be doing going forward. What I want to do is show people that if more of us take interests in these types of things, there's so many people that want to do other things, but are so scared to say, I am going to break from this, and I'm going to start doing this altruistic thing that I've always wanted to do. And the opportunity is there. Take it. Go ahead.
One of the fascinating things is the speaking engagements, or the things that I do that are, you set off to say, oh, I'm going to promote the book. But what you get into is you get into different speaking engagements that really they have something to do with the book, but really what it ends up doing is that you're either educating or you're doing patient advocacy. And it's so rewarding. I'm telling you, it is so rewarding. There's a high school teacher where I live that said, it'd be great if you came in and spoke to the staff and then had a session that you'd speak to the students. And I'm going to be doing that. And then there's also speaking engagement with a local addiction center. And all the things that I hear, like from higher up on a national level, it's interesting to go to addiction center and then listen to what they say. And they're on the ground. They're the foot soldiers on the ground. They bring the patients in, and they have to deal with the family members, and they have to deal with everything that goes on. And it's just, it's yeoman work. It's unbelievable to experienced that. And those are some of the things that in the future I'm doing more and more of.
That is great because, and by the way, just want to say something. Yeah, I get a lot of folks that come on here with books, and I get all these things with books. Let me just say, the only time I go off with these books is people that you can actually see that is what they're doing. In your stuff here, you can see that this is something you care about, and you're just not plugging a book. You know, there are some people that are just plugging a book, and there are some people that are actually making a material difference in society, and I consider you one of those.
Oh, thank you.
Anyhow, latter question.
Yes.
What
Yes.
didn't I ask you that you wanted me to ask you?
Oh my gosh, I don't know what.
I gave you a heads up.
I know you gave me a heads up. I completely got a blank. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to lead me into that.
Well, anyhow, that's not a problem. I think one of the things that I should have asked you is what's next? Is there another book coming? What's going on?
Oh my gosh, there is another book coming.
There is one coming.
I really want to do. I know you're gonna. Okay, so let's back up a little bit. Oh, this is a, and I don't know whether I'm going to do this or not, but I think it needs to be done. Okay. This book is sort of a scolding.
Okay. I want to hear that.
And what it is that this country can be better.
Okay.
And we're not. And there is a lot of areas that we need to do better on. And it's not just politics. It's not just, it's like, when did we stop caring for our own Americans? When did we stop that? When did we stop? And Alberto, this is the number one thing. When did we stop paying attention to what we should do as humans, as Americans in this society? Like, yes, you have a job, but there's more to your job than just doing your job and then clocking out. If you see something, say something. If you see somebody in need, do a kind act during the day. Why not do something as a kind act all the time? You know, I think back to my grandmother and going to church, and you know, I'm going to be a good boy. I'm going to be a good boy. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to be a good boy. But what are you doing Monday through Saturday, right? Right? It's like, yes. I don't mean to preach in that sense, but I think we all could be better if we looked at those, whatever those problems are we have as a country, we can solve those together. That's what I'm thinking of.
Well, you know what, Bruce? That was the answer. And I tell you something else. Now that you've said that out loud,
yes,
we're going to hold you to that book, and I'll be I want to be one of the first ones to interview you when you're done writing that book, because you're a good writer. Author of Cold Comfort: One Man's Struggle to Stop the Illegal Marketing of Powerful Opioid Drugs and Save Lives. Senor Bruce Boise, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that, but that was a pretty darn, what I call a pretty darn important piece. This is a guy who blew the whistle, and he cost the industry quite a few $1 billion. But anyhow, let's continue here with the rest of the program. I want, this morning I saw Stephanie Ruhle interviewing Representative Kevin Brady here from Texas, Houston, my area. And it just, you know, I started to get angry. But then I realized that anger is not the answer. The answer is education. The answer is making sure our fellow brothers and sisters know what's going on. So what I did is I took her interview and split it up and did what needed to be done. So I want you guys to check this out, then we'll take it on the other side. Stephanie Ruhle did a great job interviewing Congressman Kevin Brady from Texas. He came out in completely full mode attack on taxes on corporations. I want to play this, and then we'll take it on the other side. You shouldn't get upset from these guys. What we need to do is ourselves get educated and also inform others so that we don't fall for the kind of crap that they talk about. But it is essential that we understand exactly how things work. Let's go ahead and get it started.
Republican on the House Ways and Means Committee, Texas Congressman Kevin Brady. Congressman, always good to see you. Can you share any details about this Republican counteroffer? And are you on board based on what you know?
We're watching this carefully, and clearly I think there's consensus that I think the president needs to start over on this, because let's start with bipartisan support. Roads, bridges, infrastructure, and broadband, for example, have always been priorities for both parties. We've always worked together on those issues. Why not do that again? I think refocusing it down on not just traditional infrastructure, but looking at broadband issues like that make perfect sense. And of course, when he coupled that with the largest tax increase in 70 years on job creators as we're trying to recover from an economic crisis, that makes no sense. In fact, the economists seem to show that America is the net loser in this economically when you add those tax increases.
Even though
Presumptuous. Americans said that they wanted a different direction. Now he wants the Democrats to completely scrap what they've done and adopt the policies that we decide we call infrastructure. And then he talks about the largest tax increase. You cannot believe these types of arguments. The reality is our tax rates, first of all, the major corporations do not pay what the face value is, and as such, we should be charging them more taxes for these issues.
we would get a tax increase for corporates, it's still below where we were for corporates 4 years ago. If you don't like the idea of corporations paying more taxes to pay for this infrastructure bill, where would we get the money from? Who pays?
So this is a proposed 1/3 increase on taxes on job creators.
Job creators. They want to call the corporations the job creators. The corporations are not solely the job creators. Those people who work for the corporations, their spending power is what is the job creation engine. You spend money with all other companies and other people to buy things, that creates an economy of jobs. These people at the top are not the sole job creators. We cannot let that be ingrained in one's head to believe that job creation comes from the top. Job creations comes from all our economic activity, creating the need for goods, and when we create the need for goods, other people buy it. It may be major corporations that create more goods. It could be small companies that create more goods. Big companies are not intrinsically the job creators. Let's get away from that fallacy.
Worse than China and the same as Syria. It will mean slower growth and hiring here. It will mean more jobs moving
But
overseas.
then how do you want to pay for it?
Let's get rid of that lie that somehow taxing corporations will cost jobs. It's a lie. It's a lie that should be refuted more vigorously, not only by hosts, not only by Democrats, but by everybody. Let's see how it works. The corporations have a lot of tax. They saved a lot of money. Instead of putting it back into the economy, they bought back their own stocks, which made their stocks more expensive. They have more value. The people get richer. Nothing gets created. Instead, if you tax the corporation, instead of making their stock price higher for a few people, that money goes right back into the economy to create the people who are going to line the electrical wires that are going to insulate the homes, the people who are going to be helping those people in healthcare. All the monies that are taxed immediately gets thrown into the economy. A person is going to be able to buy one more hamburger. Because they buy one more hamburger, it means that hamburger company has to buy more meat. Hamburger company has to buy more bread. The bread maker has to buy more wheat, more flour. That $1 that gets taxed into the economy from people who are going to spend it actually gets expanded by many times over, and economists have shown that $1 in taxes from the wealthy who are not going to spend it back into the economy creates more activity. What it does, however, is it evens out a bit more because they are hoarding money. You're taking the money that they're hoarding. You say, earned it. No, they did not earn it. Remember, profit is money earned that you were not paid. But that's how the economy works. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have profits. I believe in profits, just not excessive profits. Don't believe that the monies that they have is somehow earned. An executive sitting in an office telling other people what to do shouldn't be making 350 times more than what he's telling people to do. That money is their money that they made and that he keeps. We have to reframe the debate.
Here where I would focus. Infrastructure, especially roads and bridges, has always been tied to user fees. I would look at that. Secondly, we don't make very good use of a lot of our incentives right now. I think our private activity bonds need to be refocused.
User fees are taxes. In other words, everybody drives. And already we have a user fee for roads. It's called a gasoline tax. Everybody who buys gasoline puts it in a car, and that car drives. That gasoline tax is a user fee. It's not the way we should pay for roads, because by having that user fee for all of us to build those roads and bridges and keep them running, we are subsidizing corporations. How are we doing that? Remember the following. When the corporations, all those when you're on the freeway and you see those big trucks that are the ones that really decimate these roads, that break these roads up, those big trucks are moving goods for corporations that are selling to you. In other words, you are paying for these goods being driven on the road. The corporation needs those roads more so than you do to drive to actually get their goods moving. But better than that, when you are driving to work, you are driving for that corporation. You are getting there so that you can make a profit for that corporation. So when they complain about they don't want to pay the inordinate amount of taxes for roads and bridges, they should be paying most of it, because all our activities on these roads, the trucks that haul the goods, the people that use these highways to go to work, then we have to realize that they are doing us no favors by paying more taxes for infrastructure. Something that is very important for us to understand. We have to change the paradigm. They want you thinking that they are doing you a favor. You are actually paying them to make money.
On infrastructure, I think we look at our bonding abilities. And the other thing, Stephanie, is there is a ton of private capital around that would love to invest in America's infrastructure. We don't do it.
All right. There's a lot of private capital to invest in infrastructure. In other words, why not let the people who trade in stocks and all of that, get the capital from all these rich people, and we'll build a road, we'll charge a toll. That's a tax, but it's not only a tax, it's a transfer of wealth, because when you pay that toll, you're not only paying to repay the bond, you're not only paying to keep the road fixed, you're transferring a profit to those people who build the roads. Why don't we just fund the roads ourselves and not have interest payments and not have any of those payments? We can do it without having that extra expense, which is called profit. They're tricking you. They're saying, we'll build it for you. We'll use our capital, the private capital, to build it for you. But we're going to sock it to you, because you're going to be paying for that road with tolls. And not only are you going to be paying for the repair with those roads and tolls, you're going to be giving a little piece of that dollar every time to that rich person who actually invested the capital to build the roads. We don't need anybody to invest in the capital to build the road. We can pay to build the road ourselves. We can bond. We can create our own bonds, government bonds, to build the roads, and we can then pay back. And you know where that interest in paying those bonds? Coffers of the United States of America. They don't want you to understand how these things work, because if you realize that when they talk about private investment in public structures, what they're really saying is that's a way that the private sector taxes us all. It's a tax. They don't call it a tax, but it is nothing more than a tax. But you know what's worst about it? It's a tax that makes that nothing for you. If we build the roads with our own government bonds and all of that, we are taxing ourselves. And when I say government bonds, I'm not talking about selling government bonds for somebody who makes a profit on the bonds. I'm saying internalize government bonds, in effect, printing money and then eventually capturing it back for accounting purposes. It's a more difficult thing to discuss. It's beyond the scope of this particular tape.
Corporations don't want their taxes raised, but this infrastructure program would help corporate America. Roads, bridges, expanded broadband, job creation, the economy having more money. That would be great for corporations. So why shouldn't they have to pay for any of this? They'll benefit.
So it is all offset economically by these tax increases. Over the long term, infrastructure does help us grow the economy. Not so much over the short term. Long term, it does. But the tax increases, as you know, land not on the corporations. They don't pay it. They collect it. Lands on their workers, on their customers with price increases, on families counting on it for retirement. And again, there's no question when our tax rate is so much worse than our global competitors, you know, you're going to see companies moving overseas. And I will tell you the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, whether you agree with it or not, it ended the inversions, as we call it, headquarters, manufacturing overseas. It created a giant sucking sound back into the United States. We risk those jobs and investment with these tax increases. Why? So bottom line is, why are we funding infrastructure on the back of American workers?
You notice what he said at the end? He forgot to put that in. That was one of the talking points. Funding infrastructure on the back of the American people. But what he was actually saying is, no, you're funding it on the back of the corporate. Look, it's a lie. And it's a lie that upfront infrastructure doesn't create immediate bang for the buck. That was a lie. It's a long-term and short-term. The short-term portion is while you're building the infrastructure. You have to hire all these people to lay mortar, to lay bricks, to run lines. That influx is nearly immediate. And long-term is because you have good infrastructure, you can actually have good telephony, good all these other things. But the other thing that he likes to say is that somehow it affects the people's investment. No, it does not. It may reduce the investments of the super wealthy because they don't have as much money to invest because we're taking back some of what's ours. But the smaller person, the person who will be able to earn more money as they get these infrastructure jobs, they now will be able to save more. They now will be able to partake more. But moreover, he constantly talks about the private sector. The private sector should have absolutely nothing to do with infrastructure in the public sector. Nothing, because again, every time you charge a user fee for a public entity, it's a transfer of wealth from the regular person to that rich guy who holds the bonds, who built it. If we really want to have public things, let the public build it. We don't have any profit motive in it. And if we don't have a profit motive, that is more money that we can use to make that particular thing better. And that goes for infrastructure as well. Tech corporations have been getting away with murder when it comes to infrastructure and the things that we all build. We have to make sure and take it back. All right, folks, I have two other videos, but let me see. I got about 18 minutes left, and these are two with BLM. I think I am going to hold back on those videos, and let's chat here because I don't want to run over with them. So I'm a little bit kind of fuzzy with time today. That happens every so often. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my ask, and then I'm going to go to the screen and start answering those questions that you guys have. But folks, if you are on YouTube right now, please support our program. As you can see, we work very hard to amplify the message, amplify the progressive message, and make sure to fix the lies that you hear on TV that seems plausible. Anybody listening to Kevin Brady there, he's an amenable guy. He looks nice, and he's just lying through his teeth. And if you don't listen in between, you have a tendency to believe this is a man, this is a respectable congressman, and he will not be lying to me. That was an interview compounded with lies upon lies, built upon fallacies, built upon fallacies. That's what we do. We correct the record. We also make sure other people, we expand this. This isn't only here. We have this in podcasts on the Apple platform. We have this in podcasts and the, LinkedIn, all over the place. This is going to be. So you help put this message out. So what I ask is, if you're on YouTube right now, click that join button and become a member. Help us get this message out. And like I said, it's not only here on YouTube. It's not only here on Facebook Live. It's not only here on Twitch. It's not only on Periscope. It's also all over on podcasts, on Apple, and on, well, if you bring up our website, you see all the different platforms where we're at. You get it at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Spotify. It's everywhere that you want to get it on. We are out there trying to put this message out. Of course, we put it in books as well. Like the current book that we have is How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors. As I See It, it's my previous book. So we try to do all these things. So please, if you're so kind, please click that join button and become a member. If you become a member during the show, I'll post it up there like I do all the time with those who join during the show. If you are on Facebook or one of the other platforms and still want to become a member of our YouTube posse, please go ahead at PDR Posse. Please go ahead and click on that link, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Look, if you want, you can also get our cup. Our people designed everything here. We have the cup designed by PDR by Bridge MCP, who's our leader in the PDR Posse. She designed that cup, and so there are some pictures on the screen of some of the people who are so kind to have purchased our cups or our mugs as well. So please consider doing that. I'm going to put that link on the screen as well. Here is the link to the mugs on the screen. Likewise, folks, we also need support via our Patreon network. Patreon is a way that people can support in a secure way as well. All of our ways of support are secure. You can support us on Patreon, and the address is politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, or you can as well support us at PayPal. And how do you get there? politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. Look, we have this book. This is our current book. It's worth it. How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Friends, Relatives, and Neighbors. You can get that at Amazon right now. And by the way, it's now shipping. I mean, you can now get it as an audiobook. You can now get it as an audiobook. So when you go to that link, you can either get it as an ebook, a hard copy book like the one I just showed you, the paperback, or you can get it as a audiobook. And that, I should bring up the audiobook. But anyway, I'll do that in a little bit. Likewise, if you want to get rid of the middle person so that the profit all goes to Politics Done Right, you can just go ahead and get this at our store, politicsdoneright.com/store, politicsdoneright.com/store. And if you get it at our store, we will go ahead and send it to you with our bumper sticker, as well as I'll sign whatever one of our books that you buy. And, yesterday somebody bought all 3 of the books that we're currently shipping. We have a new book that's coming out called How to Make America Utopia. Doing some read over on that one right now for grammar, etc., etc., etc. And then we'll be getting it all posted up at Amazon. And then later on, I think I'm going to do the narration on that one myself. Don't want to overwork any of my great supporters here. Norman Reynolds, who's one of our great listeners and supporters, is one of the narrators of one of the books that we've done so far. So anyway, but stick with us. Anyway, let me go ahead and start talking to you guys. Let me scroll up here and see what folks are saying. I'm going to start with, let's see here, AVQ. I think I took your AVQ. Deb Denny, welcome aboard. Well, let me back up before Deb Denny. I think there are a lot more before that. Yeah, okay. Abraham thinks I'm a Cancer. Julie Van Assel, Abraham Trump is a creative name. Ha ha ha. Okay, let's see. Julie Van Assel says, no, that's a different. Carl Cox, greed, corruption, ignorance, gullibility, and crony capitalism is reason for blockage of Green New Deal. Exactly. A lot of people don't understand that, but that is the truth. Julie Van Assel, I tagged Bruce Boise. Thank you very much for tagging Bruce Boise. I'm apolitical, you guys. Okay, I'm glad that you're apolitical. Nanette Bird-Smith, welcome aboard. Julia Van Assel says, Abraham, I'm fairly certain that you are a human being, not a computer. Yeah, OG, welcome, Abraham Trump. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Michael Rudden says, No, that was a reply from Michael Rudnin. We have Canada and much of Europe has already had success lowering overdose deaths with decriminalization of heroin. Very, very important. Most heroin overdoses are due to what to the heroin is cut with. Fentanyl is a plague. We need to end the drug war as legalization will bring. It's funny that we have. It's funny that we have all these things to be these real bad crimes, right? And things that should be real bad crimes, like getting drunk and killing 10 people. Oh, you get a slap on the wrist. Deborah John, welcome aboard. Egberto, they're troll paid operatives. I don't think any of one of our trolls here are actually paid trolls. I did a little bit of research on a couple that I thought were paid trolls, and it turned out that they just like politics done right. They claim they're trolls, but they just like I think they love the love that you guys give them, because this is a platform where we don't deal in bringing people down. We deal in bringing people up, right? That's what we believe in. All right, let's see what else we got here. Let's see. ATL checking in. Paul Fleming, you're late. 1523, Paul. Carl Cox. Until executive corporations, big pharma, bank investment firms, and others are fined heavily and imprisoned long-term prison terms, nothing will change for the better. Agreed. Let's see what else. Carl Cox, thank you. Eric Hayes replying to Rudnin, guess the perpetual rolling outages will start then too. How do you get the peaker energy you will need? How are you going to run the big semi-trucks and cranes with sun and wind? That's a very good question that has answers, and they're scientific answers. All right? I want to tell you something. You think we have to burn oil because oil is there all of the time. First of all, oil is not there all of the times, and not only that, the exhaust from oil, ultimately is not the best thing for us. But when I talk about critical thinking and our educational system, right? Everyone in our educational system should have learned one formula. E is equal to mc squared. That's one, which means energy and mass, and how energy correlates into mass. And the second thing that they should have learned is mass cannot be created. Energy and mass cannot be created or destroyed, just transform into one another. Why do I say that? Because a lot of people think there's something special about oil or carbon or whatever. When you look at oil, you're looking at solar energy. How did that come about? The solar energy is what grew the plants that the animals ate. When they died, they fossilized, and their bodies were carbonized and turned into petroleum. But it's all beginning with the energy from the sun. And to some extent, nuclear energy from the center of the earth that keeps certain places warm, which enhance life. So again, oil, carbon, these are, meaning coal, these are stored forms of solar energy. That's science number one. And once you start to look at the concept as far as how we move energy and transform it from one form to the other, the next question shouldn't be from a negative standpoint. Oh, if we only use renewable energy, that somehow we cannot survive. The truth of the matter is, even oil, if over millions of years, is renewable energy, right? Because you burn oil, and as you burn it, it heats up the atmosphere and stuff. We know that. But if you get enough plants to suck it back in, those are the plants that are sucking in carbon dioxide that was replaced into the atmosphere with these burning fuel, and you can do it. The problem is our lifespan isn't over millions of years, and we are now in command of the earth. We can choose to go through the natural life cycles of a planet, which means ice age comes and goes, right? But it comes and goes in such a fashion that you can adapt to it. What we are doing with the planet today is making transitions that are faster than would occur naturally, which is a detriment to humanity. Now, when you start to say we cannot currently do renewable energies 100%, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of science. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of physics and how things work. How does it work? We have people say, oh, well, wind is intermittent. True. Sun is intermittent. True. You could also say oil is intermittent over several 100,000 years. How do we solve the problem? The problem shouldn't be that it's intermittent. The issue is, how do we store it for the times that it's not there, that they're not there? And there are many, many technologies to do so. And by the way, renewable energy isn't only solar and wind, it's also wave energy. It's also thermal energy, which is nuclear energy from the middle of the earth that keeps a lot of stuff hot down there. It's a lot of different ways of having renewable energy. But the ones that we use that are intermittent, solar and wind. Let me give a little options here for wind. We have thousands of windmills going, right? What can we do to somehow pair windmills with other forms of energy that we can store? Let me give you some examples. We are going to have the mega drought in the West. The Great Lakes of Lake Mead and Lake Powell and all of these guys are draining, right? What is that water that's behind those dams? The water behind those dams, that's solar energy. How did it become solar energy? Evaporation of water throughout the world. It comes over Colorado and all these other places. It snows from the water that evaporated from the sun, and that water gets collected into the lake. Guess what? That is what's called a back-end store. What's a back-end store? It means that you store the water in the lake at a high level so that you can create electricity downstream later on. So let's talk about how do you handle intermittent energy. We have the technology that says the following. We collect as much of the wind as possible, more wind than we need in any given day. The excess amount of wind, instead of just turning the blades off, if you drive through Texas or you drive through California, you'll see a lot of times that you'll see some of the windmills turning and some of them not turning. Why are some of them not turning? Is that they're down for repair? Is that there's nobody who needs the energy at that time? There's no reason they have to be that way, right? We can build a lot of windmills, have the excess energy go to pump water into Lake Mead, right? Where is the water coming from Lake Mead? Oh, let's remind you how physics work. The water in Lake Mead goes down, it goes through the turbines, it loses its kinetic energy, right? Its potential energy, turns it into kinetic energy that creates electricity and then goes down. We have pumps below that's running off of the store from the wind, and we pump the water back into the lake. That's just one form. We have batteries that we can build, right? We don't only have to use lithium batteries. We can use all kind of battery technologies that are stores. Each individual person's home can store energy in a particular place. So there is enough renewable energy than we could possibly use. The problem is how we optimize it, how we use it, how we store it. Earlier, we were talking with Brother Rudnin, who we said the biggest problem to having a reliable energy system and reliable everything is capitalism. Because you have to amortize everything that you invest in. You have to ensure that everybody is going to see in the future that they're going to be rich. But if we are working like ants and working for the common good, we do what's good first. If there are bodies to work, we can put those bodies to work. But that's not what we have. A limiting thing called the economic system. The economic system says, well, you know, if we put that thing to work there, how long will it take that guy to make 7% profit over X amount of years? That doesn't have a damn thing to do with whether you can create energy or not. But our economic system becomes the limiting factor. As an example, even look at infrastructure. There are broken bridges, broken roads, and there are a lot of people that are unemployed. Why can't we match those two together? The economic system, we're talking about how it's going to be paid for. Wait, There's work to be done and there are people to do the work. And the question is, how are we going to pay for it? That's a failure of an economic system. And until we understand that, until we understand what a failed economic system looks like, what we have, we won't make changes, and only a few would really get the big spoils. Let me run down to questions real quickly. The taxes on corporate will be passed on to consumer. So what? Of course. But, so what if it's passed on to consumers? Of course, it should be. It should be passed on to consumers because that's what the thing costs. We always talk about externalities. What's wrong with that? Okay, Julie Van Assel, he's my kind of person. Yeah, he's a good guy. All right, let me keep going down. Jessica Taylor, welcome aboard. Let's see. Carl Cox, Republicans don't like taxes on corporations and mega rich because they get bribes. All right, coming down. I'm going to go down a little quicker here because it seems like I got a lot of messages. Let's go down. Help me out, people. Let's see. Going to pay for everything with money that grows on the imaginary money trees. Again, you're fantastically buying into one economic system. And that's why you think that way. Going to pay for everything that money grows on an imaginary tree. You see, you were first programmed to believe that this piece of paper means something. Remember, in years past, there was never a piece of paper that represented some sort of money, right? You had to exchange it for gold. Or you had to exchange it for something. They had to have some way to turn trade-in, bartering into, in effect, money was the back-end store. Money was how you could store something that you don't yet need. In other words, if I have this bottle that I am selling, you want this bottle, but I don't need anything else right now. I will give you the bottle. You would give me money. Later on, when I need something to buy, I convert this bottle into this bottle of alcohol. But at the time that I sold you this bottle, I didn't need this alcohol, so I just held it as money. I wish critical thinking is what we don't teach in school anymore. These are concepts we don't teach in school, and because we don't teach these, I got all of this in Panama. Because we don't teach these things, what happens is politicians can come and tell Americans anything. And they believe, well, if I'm a right-wing person, this is what I believe. If I'm a left-wing person, this is what I believe. But if you're a critical thinker, you will analyze everything. And I gave a basic concept that determined why our economic system is a failure. And we'll have to continue this tomorrow. But basically, this is a question to ask. There is a lot of people available to do work. There is a lot of work that needs to be done. There's enough land out there for us to grow an immense amount of food to supply everybody in the world. The fact that all those things are not done, and we always have to ask the question, where is the money coming from? And I just gave you that explanation of what money is used for. Money is an abstraction, right? I need this, that. It's an abstraction. The fact that we can't do that says that the economic system is a failed system. And the question is, how do we create an economic system that works for humanity? Not thinking about how it works now. That's backward thinking. Think about how can we make it work. And we start with intellectuals that really have good concept, like Stephanie, what's her name? Stephanie Kearns, the economist that does MMT and others. All right, I'm going to go to the bottom of the list here because, okay, let's see. E2247, thank you for being here. Let's see, I got to get out of here. What else? Who else is here? Michael Rodnin, let's see. AVQ, share. Thank you for sharing. What is that you're sharing? Let's see who else is here. Stephanie Kelton, thank you. Stephanie Kelton, that's the person I was looking for. Some of those leaders claim zero carbon dumping right now as they represent indigenous persons, Africa, who use no petroleum products in their horticultural practices. Watch today's session 3 on climate security. Did you put the link in there, E2247? Julie Vanasel, welcome. Let's see, who else did I miss? Anybody else I missed? Anyhow, look, folks, I want you to really, going forward, think about think about not what you have been indoctrinated with. Start thinking about what we could do further. Because what we have been doing is the grandchild, the great 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 grandchild, the great 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 grandchild of a few men whose purpose was only to keep themselves enriched. They didn't care about you or me. They cared about indoctrinated you and me into believing that this was the only economic system possible. It is our job to prove otherwise. Look, thank you for being here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.